Creepiest Doorbell. Camera clips that will make you never open your door again. Part 1. The Eye That Watched. It was a quiet, unassuming evening when Jake, a man in his late 30s, living alone in a suburban neighborhood, settled down on the couch, ready to relax after a long day at work. The hum of the ceiling fan and the soft glow of the television filled the room as he scrolled through his phone, absent-mindedly checking his social media. But then, a sudden vibration in his pocket jolted him from his distraction. The notification on his phone was from the Ring app. "Motion detected at your front door." He frowned, puzzled. It was late, and Jake was sure he had checked the locks before sitting down. He glanced at the clock, just past midnight, and shrugged it off as a false alert, maybe triggered by the wind or a stray animal. But something told him to check anyway. Opening the Ring app, Jake's heart skipped a beat as the video feed loaded. At first, it was nothing, just a blurry, empty frame. But then, the camera adjusted and the image sharpened. He could see a man standing at his front door. His face was too close to the camera, the eyes eerily wide, staring directly into the lens. Jake's breath caught in his throat. There was no mistaking it. The man was looking straight at him through the very screen that he was holding in his hand. The man didn't knock. He didn't ring the doorbell. He simply stood there, motionless, with his dark eyes fixed on the camera. For a moment, Jake didn't know what to do. He instinctively pulled the phone away from his face, but the image stayed burned in his mind. Those eyes, wide open, unblinking, locked onto him in the silence of the night. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought that had suddenly crept into his mind. What if he's still out there, watching me right now? But that's when the sound started. A low, almost imperceptible whispering came through the speaker of his phone. It was soft at first, barely audible, like someone muttering to themselves in the distance. Jake instinctively turned the volume up, straining to hear. The whispering grew louder, clearer. "Come out! Come out! Just a little longer!" It was a strange, disjointed chant, like a lullaby, but filled with an unnerving cadence. Each word sounded distorted, as if the man wasn't quite speaking in his normal voice. The hairs on Jake's neck stood on end. The strange man didn't move. He just continued standing there, staring, whispering, the faint sound of his words creeping into Jake's home, filling every corner of the otherwise quiet room. The atmosphere thickened, heavy with an unspoken threat that loomed over him. Panic clawed at Jake's chest. His eyes darted to the front door. He quickly stood up, still staring at the phone, but before he could even think of what to do next, the man's face disappeared from the screen. In the blink of an eye, the camera feed was interrupted, replaced with a blur of static. Frustrated and confused, Jake tried to open the app again, but the feed wouldn't load. Something was wrong. He stood frozen, staring at his phone, waiting for it to reconnect. The seconds stretched into minutes, and just as he was about to put the phone down, there it was again. The notification, "Motion detected at your front door." This time, Jake moved toward the door, his pulse quickening. He reached for the handle but hesitated. A cold sweat dripped down his back as he glanced through the peephole. Nothing. The porch was empty. Still, something felt off. Every instinct in him told him to stay inside, to lock every door and window, and never open that door. But then, the doorbell rang. It was a soft but persistent sound. Jake's hand shook as he reached for the handle, slowly turning it. The air outside was thick with silence. He stepped out, carefully checking the surroundings. His breath came out in visible puffs in the cold night air, but there was nothing. No sign of the man. Relief washed over him, but only for a brief moment. As Jake turned to head back inside, a faint sound, barely a whisper, made his blood run cold. From the darkness behind the bushes near his porch, he heard a voice, almost like a sigh. "I'm still here." Jake whirled around, but there was no one in sight. His heart was pounding in his chest as he hurried back into the house, locking the door behind him. He felt foolish, his mind racing to dismiss the thoughts that were quickly becoming overwhelming. Just a prank, or maybe the wind. But then he noticed something on the screen of his phone. A new notification. Someone is at your door again. This time, the camera feed showed the man once more. But now, he was standing just inches away from the door, his face pressed against the glass. And those eyes were still staring, but they weren't filled with the same eerie calm. Now they were frantic, wide with a terrifying hunger, as if he was trying to peer into Jake's very soul. A sense of dread enveloped Jake as the man's lips parted. He wasn't whispering anymore. The words came out loud, clear and chilling. "Open the door, Jake, I'm waiting." The atmosphere in Jake's home became suffocating. A cold draft seeped in from under the door. His heart hammered in his chest. The man wasn't just watching anymore. He was taunting him, daring him to make a move. Jake stood frozen, paralyzed by fear, as the whispers began again, louder this time, overlapping with his racing thoughts. He could feel the man's presence, as if the walls around him were closing in. Then, just when he thought it couldn't get worse, a sharp knock echoed through the door, loud, urgent, insistent. Jake's hand trembled as he reached for the doorbell app again, his fingers shaking violently. But the feed had cut out again, and this time the notification didn't appear. His phone was dead. The house was silent once more, but Jake knew deep down that the man was still out there, watching, waiting. As Jake stood frozen, staring at the empty porch outside his door, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and disbelief, he knew one thing for sure: this was just the beginning. The man, the chilling presence, was still out there, lurking in the shadows, and Jake had no idea what his next move would be. With every nerve in his body screaming to lock up and hide, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the first of many encounters he would face. The unsettling whispers from the man, the eerie silence that followed, and the cold chill that seemed to settle over the house were only the beginning of something far more sinister. What did this man want, and why did he seem so determined to get inside Jake's world? Stay tuned for part 2, The Phantom by the Door, where the terror continues to escalate and the true nature of the haunting figures outside begins to unfold. You won't want to miss what happens next.